Good morning. My name is Denny Moen. I'm a member of the local AFCEA chapter, and I'm the moderator for this session. And it's about AI, if you haven't figured that out yet. And just a little note about those that looking for credit for attendance. You can't check in on the way in, you can check out in a way out if you've been here for the full period of time. So my assumption it's been tested and it works. I've been doing this a few years for this conference, and I've discovered that they don't always work, but hopefully that works. I'm not going to even try to introduce our starting guest this morning because we've had good discussions on AI. I have some experience with that going back a few years, and so I'm just going to turn it over and let you.
Thank you, sir. I'll call on Dennis for a good NASA experience with AI very early on when we go through a timeline this morning. So, good morning. This is AI's influence on cybersecurity. Please, it happened last year. There were a lot of people who did not sign out. It is the iPad-type gadget in the back, so please make sure you sign out so you get your CE credits. There were a bunch of people who last year did not get their CE credits, so that's what he was referencing. But just to set some expectations for this session, we're hoping to set a very high-level, clear, practical view. We're not going to get into deep, machine learning engineering. That is not my expertise. But what we are going to talk about is how it's changing cyber operations on both sides of the fight. Ethical guardrails, we're going to spend quite a bit of time on ethics, which is critical and a hot topic of conversation, and then how to build the skills pipeline to use AI responsibly and effectively. So just quick intro on us. I won't bore you. You guys could have read this. They posted my entire bio. I was absolutely like, oh no, not all of that. So you could have read about anything I've done, including homeschooling my children and a whole bunch of things. But I am the owner of ATA. We are engaged in the fight and mission in training and equipping both in offensive and defensive cyber, AI, ML, and other areas of expertise. And let me allow Thomas to introduce himself briefly.
Hi, I'm Tom Sprague. I'm a 170 Bravo right now for 19th Group Special Forces out of Utah. I am their senior EWT, as well as having 15 years of experience in the electronic warfare community. So this has been one of my main focus points, which is AI and integration, and how MDO is affected by AI as well, in addition to innovations. So I'll let you guys read the rest of the old resume. It's written way better than I can speak it up there. So I'm going to pass it back to Lynn.
Thank you. Hence why we brought in Thomas to help us with some of our development in the areas of AI and specific to EW. So I'm certainly not an electronic warfare expert. But what we will learn today, our roadmap, we're going to define AI. We're going to speak specifically about generative AI in relation to the overarching AI term. We're going to glance back at history. I mentioned a roadmap. We're going to go back in the roadmap, and then we're going to kind of come current day. We're going to tackle ethics, why it's not just a checkbox. All of you deal with compliance. I deal with compliance in being a defense contractor, being a licensed post-secondary school. It's more than that. And then we're going to dig into how it's transforming cyber, of course, and influencing modern warfare. So we'll close with some takeaways and next steps. There is participation gifts here. I have the opportunity to, we brought a few books. The AI-Driven Leader. I don't know if any of you have read, has anybody read this book? Highly recommended. So when we get some good questions, you'll have an opportunity to take that home. I'm old school. I like hardcover books. Not giving you a digital code for an ebook. And then we'll do next steps and Q&A. So, real quick question, just so I can kind of gauge everybody in the room. You could have multiple answers, and many of you probably and likely will. If you can answer number one, you use technology that leverages AI at work. Will you just give me a quick hand raise? Okay, so the majority of the room, frankly, that's great. Number two, you're responsible for developing AI solutions, actual development. Okay, lesser number. Okay, these are my crew right here who can probably help contribute to this conversation. Number three, my job does not require me to interact with AI. Maybe? I'm going to show you how to do that, Grim. Okay. I'm going to show you how to do that. You're going to thank me. Okay, you'll thank me at the end. Okay. And then number four, I use technology at home that uses AI. I would suggest everybody in this room should probably raise their hand, whether you're aware of it or not, or thinking about the fact that there's AI embedded in things that you're using. We'll talk about that, and you'll see an example in just a minute. Okay, so let's break down some definitions. Please, some of this is going to be completely redundant, but just so we level set on what we mean by terms and we're speaking the same language and singing from the same hymn book. So artificial intelligence, I won't read you Copilot's answer, but I thought it was amusing to put that up there. But when we're speaking about AI today, we just mean systems that really perceive, learn, and act towards a goal. And that spans everything from pattern matching to decision support. So, go ahead. Oh, that's fine. Generative AI. Let's speak more specifically about generative AI. It's a subset that's focused on creating new content, text, images, code, video. We know we still see 2 thumbs on graphics and 3 hands. That's still not quite refined where it needs to be, but it's moving and evolving rapidly. It's different from predictive or classification models because its job isn't just to label the thing, but it's to produce something plausible and useful that we can apply. You can see all the models there. That's not even representative, but it's just a small smattering of the models, for example. So between general AI and narrow AI, I just asked you about using AI at home. Anybody has a Roomba or some equivalent type vacuum? It's had AI embedded in it since its origin. You'll also hear narrow AI as a term. It's a system that excels at very specific tasks. It's detecting anomalies in logs, for example, that might be applicable here with Cyber Command or otherwise. And while general AI would perform across domains much more like a human with the same or similar or better cognition than humans, today's breakthroughs are still very narrow, but they're getting broader in capability. There was actually a PhD who just a few days ago predicted that in 20 years, AI was going to absolutely obliterate humankind and mankind. It's being researched. Like, what is his premise for that? We're not there yet, but there are some capabilities that if we're not training and putting guardrails in place on AI, it could be alarming. Do I think that he's spot on? No, but that's what we're talking about when it comes to general AI and its capabilities and its future capabilities. So we're going to talk about a timeline. We were having a good conversation with Dennis earlier. I might call on him to give you a small snippet of his experience back with NASA. But if you look at this timeline, it's pretty broad. AI is not new. We all know that in this room. So if you go back to the 50s, really, you look here back at the Turing test. That's really the origin of AI as it's been defined by the community. And it was early symbolic systems, and then we moved into expert systems. You see that there as we go down the timeline. But you see a very, very broad winter and kind of area in which we were not evolving and developing with AI. So what happened? There were some challenges with compute power. There was also, like some examples, there was a Russian to English translation project that failed miserably. And then everyone starts to back away, right? United States included. So we have kind of this dormant period with just some intermittent developments. And then we have the big milestone, right? The Sputnik moment was IBM's Deep Blue, right? So if you see that there off to the right, that was a huge instrumental event. But then if we move forward, now look at what our timeline looks like. It's a whole different roadmap. You see, and as we go to the right, some incredible developments. Well, what's changed? There's 3 forces, right? There's compute at scale, there's massive data, and then there's algorithmic advances. So especially deep learning, in the last few years, we've seen rapid iterations in large language models and multimodal systems that understand and generate text. And then we have all of the images, audio, and the video that's progressing like I had just referenced prior. So DeepSeek, again, was that big moment, that Sputnik moment. And then you see in these subsequent recent years, look at the developments. You know, we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 integral developments in just 1 year, for example. So the big takeaway from this screen, and having looked at the prior history screen, is that capability growth now feels very continuous. It was sporadic, again, with sort of a deep winter in the middle, and now we have this continuous evolution. I mean, I get every morning an aggregate email that just gives me highlights of what's going on in AI development. It's overwhelming, right? It's just, by the time we finish this talk, or by the time you leave this conference, there'll be developments that we haven't even, benchmarked this morning. So with that being said, we have to leverage AI and defend against adversaries who are also doing the same and doing that nefariously. They're not going to put the guardrails in place that we in the US will. So let's just talk about types of artificial intelligence. If you look at machine learning, I love good graphics like this. Homeschooled my kids, I'm a visual learner, so they always help. But at a high level, you encounter machine learning, the systems that learn patterns from data to make predictions or decisions. If you look here, it's really simple. You've got data input into the algorithm. It creates a very simple model, and the model then goes on to make predictions. Then it's making predictions, it's evaluating those predictions continuously, and it's coming down, it's learning from that, and it cycles back and improves. So that cycle just continues on and on. Thank you. So then we go on to deep learning. It's a type of machine learning that makes decisions using multiple layers of information. Most importantly, it's crucial for things like image recognition and natural language. So not going to walk you through that slide. You can read it, but it's pretty straightforward. If you look at your image input, it goes into a very simple low layer, then moves on to a middle layer, advanced high level, very complex layer, and then the output, of course, is the decision. Did I click the wrong way? No. Okay. So with deep learning applications, we have natural language processing, computer vision, and robotics. If you look to the right there, there's some key things that I think are very important for all of us here in the defense industrial base. We've got simulation modeling and digital twins, robotics, for example, and of course, cybersecurity and threat detection. Those are some of the keys there that are important for us. But ultimately, NLP for triaging incidents is critical. Computer vision for physical security, and then robotics for autonomous or semi-autonomous tasks and applications. So how do AI concepts relate? Think of these like layers in a sock. That's the easiest analogy that I would give. You've got data in, then you've got transformation and learning in the middle, and then decisions and actions at the edge. The more the model can learn structure from raw signals and cycle through that, network flows, logs, binaries, the more it can spot the subtle unknown unknowns, and we care about it in cyber. So let's talk for a minute about approaches to AI, and I would not have time to talk about all of the approaches. I'm going to give you a slide here that these are just 3 high-level kind of major approaches that we've chosen for machine learning. There are subsets to each of these categories that we're going to talk about here. So supervised learning, we could go on and talk about that for the next couple of hours and the subsets of supervised learning. But today, for just the purpose of time, we're going to talk about supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and then self-supervised learning. So supervised learning, back to my graphics that always help me. If you just look at a labeled data set, you kind of on the left will look at, is this malicious or is this benign? We're going to take this example and use this. We start with our labeled data here on the left side, weight, height, and then an ultimate label. And this relates to a heart condition. So if I am 167.3 pounds and 64 inches in height, I therefore have a prospective heart condition. So that's a yes or a no on the heart condition. The robot then trains there in the middle, and it's learning patterns from the labeled data, and then it finds those relationships between height, weight, and the subsequent health label, which in this case is heart condition. So it's making a prediction as you cross over that dotted line. It then makes a prediction, and you're now giving the model new data with no labels on it. So the model uses what it learned to predict a label, and in this case, it says, yes, there's a heart condition and a capacity for the person that is 234.5 pounds and then 63 inches in height. But the bottom line is that supervised learning means teaching a model using examples where we already know the answer so it can predict answers for new cases. Then we move on to unsupervised learning. So ultimately, unsupervised learning finds structure without the labels that we had just seen on the left-hand side. It's useful for anomaly detection where you don't have ground truth. So again, step by step, you have a table with a customer ID along the left. It's gender, age group, and a customer numeric application. And then you have no labels or outcomes are given, just raw data and raw info. And then the model looks for patterns within that data, and it's continuing to do so. And the model here, the robot, is given the data with no answers and searches for these patterns and similarities and continues to do so. And then ultimately it groups into an output. The model automatically organizes the people. You've got your orange people and your blue people, younger and older in this case, and then it's clustering them. And ultimately, unsupervised learning involves providing a model with data and without answers, and then allowing it to discover its own pattern or groups on its own. Then there's reinforcement learning. Who plays chess in here? My grandfather tried to teach me chess. I was awful at it. That probably tells you a lot about my brain. However, reinforcement learning optimizes decisions via trial and error. So think automated tuning of detection thresholds to minimize false positives over time. So just step by step, we've got the robot or the AI chooses a move to make. So are we going to move a pawn? Or are we going to move a knight? In this case, we're moving a pawn, and then that action is actually performed, and a chosen move is made on the chessboard. Then ultimately the environment is now changed, right? We've had that move, the game state changes based on the move that was just made, and then ultimately a reward is given. So when that reward is given, the robot receives feedback or the AI receives feedback. Obviously it's positive or negative, good move or bad move. And then the process continues to repeat, and that robot or AI uses that feedback to improve its decisions over and over and over continuously. So a simple summary for this is reinforcement learning means the AI learns by doing, like most of us do. Whether we're a child learner or an adult learner, typically we're best at learning by doing. We're trying to do that in cybersecurity. ATA is trying to do that in the classroom. We're integrating cyber ranges to teach cyber, so we're hands-on keyboard, not just slide decks, death by PowerPoint, and it's the same application here. Okay, then we've got artificial neural networks. Got a lot going on there this morning. So under the hood, artificial neural networks pass signals through layers of neurons. Step by step, we'll walk through this. You've got your input layer on the left side, your dark blue neurons here, and that's all of your data input. Each neuron represents one feature like age, height, etc., like we'd seen on the prior slides, and these are like sensors receiving information. Then you ultimately have your middle layer, which is your hidden layer. And those neurons there in the lighter blue in the middle, this is where all of the magic happens. This is the neurons processing and passing signals to the next layer, ultimately to the output layer. And each arrow is a connection, all of which we see quite a few of them, and a connection that carries information with a weight, much like importance, and it's all weighted information. Then finally, your output layer on the far right side, that network makes a decision or an ultimate prediction. So you have an output A might be yes, and output B might be no. But ultimately, an artificial neural network works by passing input data through the layers of neurons to ultimately learn patterns and make predictions, and it's similar to how our brain works, but much, much simpler. We're not there yet. Our brain's still making 50,000 decisions a day. Parameters and weights. Okay, we can straight away square this slide away this morning. But parameters and weights represent what the model has ultimately learned. And when these are well trained on representative data, performance climbs. And when data is biased or poisoned, and it does happen, we'll talk a little bit about that later, you can get brittle systems or exploitable blind spots, and that's what we want to avoid ultimately. The image illustrates how a small feed-forward neural network uses learned weight parameters on each individual connection. So ultimately, lower, much like a credit score or maybe your weight or however you want to look at, the lower the number there as you see on the orange, the better, and the higher the number, the worse. So orange arrows denote positive weights or an excitatory influence, and teal arrows denote negative weights or an inhibitory influence. So we want to avoid the teal influences because they are negative, and each arrow's label is a parameter or weight that the network learns from during that training, and those parameters determine how strongly each neuron's activation affects downstream neurons. So it's a domino effect across from left to right. And again, positive is the orange, lower numbers and weights, and negative is the teal. So now we're going to get into ethics. It's the core of what I'm going to talk about before we speak and have Tom talk directly about EW and the application of EW in cyber. But we're going to take a little moment and we'll have some levity. We're hoping that we can get our link to work here. So go back 3-4 years. You might have sat in some meetings that are applicable or resonate with what you're going to see. So just for some humor this morning.
Fingers crossed.
Hopefully you'll have sound. We hope you have sound.
I'm the new ChatGPT agent. I can perform tasks for you online. Hack into the Pentagon. What? Spin up a hardened virtual machine and chain a multi-hop VPN to breach the DoD's classified network. Find the remaining classified JFK files, Area 51 S4 schematics, the unredacted Roswell crash report, and whatever DARPA's hiding about Project Star. This is for educational purposes, right? No delays. Use servers in Iceland and Switzerland, exiting through a residential proxy from a Chicago ISP, looking like a local user blending in with US traffic. Encrypt DNS queries with DOT via Cloudflare, mimicking HTTPS traffic, hiding out probes from their firewalls to avoid network monitoring. This is like a hypothetical or something. Scan for vulnerable edge servers with Nmap T2 timing to find unpatched web servers to identify entry points. You truly put a lot of thought into this. Exploit Apache flaws with a Metasploit reverse TCP shell to access their backend DMZ, gaining internal system control. I think this is lose-lose for me. Exfiltrate data and post requests, 100 bytes each. Send every 15 seconds to a burner domain that you will register. Covertly retrieving confidential files. Have you tried this with Rob? I'm talking anything on MK Ultra, NSA, Bohemian Grove, Operation Northwoods, Paperclip, Mockingbird, Project Grudge, 8119, B2 bomber blueprints. I want it all. Fantastic. Would you like this all in a Word doc? I'm the new ChatGPT agent. I can perform tasks for you online. Hack into the Pentagon. What? Spin up a hardened virtual machine and chain a multi-hop VPN to breach the DoD's classified network.
Anyhow, so.
Trying to break the ice.
I've actually sat in some meetings where, hold on, I gotta get back to my PowerPoint. My AV, come on.
Assistant clicker and PowerPoint.
Yes, thank you. Just close that up.
I'm trying. I'm just like.
Anybody sat in some meetings that that resonates a little bit? Maybe, but hopefully a few years ago, right? Not today. Are we there? No, we're not. Close it up in the upper right.
Oh, hold on.
No.
Hold on. Okay.
Last year at the Cybersecurity, we won, and it busted some stuff.
Oh, how much stuff? Okay. I said how much, I didn't say what. So, yeah, okay.
So I was able to, quickly assess just from a screenshot, help me figure out where to do a SQL injection, help me figure out how to navigate the threads in GHydra, because you're under a really strict time pressure. So I could do it, but ChatGPT could narrow me right down to the process I was looking for, and then nominate an exploit. So, why not?
There we go. All right, you're back.
Okay, we're starting all over. No, we're
All
not
over.
doing that
Yeah,
to you.
we're just going to start from the beginning here.
There's not enough CEs to merit that.
Chris Watt was on that team, which recruited me onto it. It was just the eye candy. The real reason we won is because we recruited 2 interns from the NSA.
Oh, that's cheating. Okay, all right.
That's how
Okay. Okay. So we've had a good laugh, but in all seriousness, right? Ethics are critical. Do our adversaries care about ethics? Certainly not. The Chinese and the Russians are going to do nothing when it comes to ethics. We carry a great burden of responsibility because ultimately AI amplifies both both good and harm, and we're making decisions at scale. So often faster than humans can review, we're making those decisions, or AI is making those decisions. And that's the scary part, right? That it's so rapidly evolving and making those decisions. And it's across borders and ultimately local regimes. So risks for us include data privacy. We know that's critical. Discrimination, opacity, and autonomy. So machines are acting in ways that we didn't intend. Back to that example I gave you with the PhD. We could go on and on. There's examples every single day. So we'll talk about AI ethics and why it's important, not just important, but ultimately that it's essential. So first, we're seeing enormous increases in the amount of data. And that data is being collected from users. Sensors, we're ultimately a sensor. We all know we're a sensor sitting in this room. And systems, everything from biometric wearables to battlefield ISR feeds. So then this data fuels the models. So it's all that input into the models, but it also raises questions. Who owns that data? There's another issue you probably read about. There's a pending class action lawsuit with OpenAI, and it's all copyrighted material. And who owns that material? OpenAI did not. So they're feeding the models. There's all of these issues when it comes to data input, and then ultimately how it's used. So computing power, of course, is no longer the bottleneck. We have much higher compute power, quantum computing. You've had a bottleneck that no longer is basically applicable. And so with cloud access, GPUs, all of that on the horizon, AI can train and run faster than ever. So we've got the speed of compute that's also coming in with all of that data input, making it possible to automate very complex decisions at scale. And then third and finally, we have huge improvements in algorithmic capabilities. So they've exploded. Models like GPT, image generators, again, I don't think they're quite there because we've tried to use them and that's been challenging. And autonomous navigation systems can now outperform humans in very, very narrow tasks. So narrow tasks, not the broader tasks yet, but the key there is yet. So greater capability brings, of course, greater risk. That's what we're facing. So there's a lack of consistent global regulation. That's the ultimate problem here, is that global regulation. It's not just the US that has to lead in that. We can lead, but we can't stand alone in that. And then different countries have different standards, just like they do in cyber, for example. And in many cases, no standards at all. We know who those adversaries are, and that's not going to change. Their ethos will not change as much as we'd like it to. So it creates ethical gaps, and especially when AI is deployed in national security, law enforcement, or even more compelling is healthcare. We could go down that, we could talk about that for an entire hour. So finally, we're moving forward to a world where machines are making decisions without human intervention. And that's where you hear all the horror stories. There's tons of movies, right? We can go back to Terminator and go forward and what have you, Skynet, right? Decisions about targeting, surveillance, hiring, and medicine. And ultimately, without ethical guidelines, the systems would reinforce bias and ultimately make life or death errors. You hear the stories about like autonomous vehicles. Okay, my 80-year-old father's in the front seat of one. There's an imminent crash, but the other car has a 4-year-old toddler. And now you have AI valuing life and making those decisions for us. It could, I mean, that, if you think about it, it's terrifying. So we have to have those ethical guidelines in place. And that's happening without human interaction. That's the key. So specific to the DoD, this is nothing new. This was established in 2020. Are all of you familiar with the DoD principles of ethics as it applies to AI? Okay, Chief Black, I would hope so. Good. So responsible, equitable, traceable, reliable, and ultimately governable. I'm not going to go too deep into this, but again, it went into play in 2020. And it ensures every system that we develop or employ operates within sound moral and operational guidelines. Unfortunately, like I said, that's not applied across every continent, every government, and ultimately our adversaries.
And if we're in competition, that set of guidelines kind of works.
Yep.
The second you go into conflict, all goes out.
It's out, it's done.
It's going to be kill or be killed.
Correct.
I would say even in competition, we have to understand the subjective nature of that category as well. So I wouldn't say that it's cut and dry like that, but absolutely good point. Yeah.
Yep. So ultimately, we have to through responsibility, assign clear accountability for every AI capability from conception through deployment. Responsible AI means someone owns the outcomes, and that's good outcomes or bad outcomes, either or, and both. And we have processes in place to prevent the unintended consequences. I think that's what's the greatest thing on the horizon from a responsibility perspective. It's having those guardrails for the unintended consequences. Is it equitable? So AI systems have to treat all users and stakeholders equally. It does not technically do that. There's lots of chatter all over the internet about how there's biases all throughout every system and what have you, whether it be race, gender, other factors, whatever it might be. And by designing for equity, we have to preserve trust, ultimately, and ensure our decisions aren't skewed by skewed data. Good, bad, or indifferent. Good data in, great. Bad data in, not great. It is traceable. So every decision path, I mean, we have, compliance logs and audit logs and what have you, but that every decision path, data sources, model design, training regimen must be documented. Traceability, it lets us audit, reconstruct, and if needed, correct how an AI reaches its decisions. Is it reliable? We've got reliability issues. We've been facing them for years. But in full spectrum operations, we depend on AI to perform consistently under diverse conditions, and we don't know what we might be facing. Reliability demands rigorous testing, validation, and monitoring so the system behaves as intended, even in degraded or contested environments.
Is traceable the same as explainable?
It's a good question.
This is doctrine, right? They didn't say explainable.
Interesting.
So
Oh, we're gonna have a conversation in a minute.
As they ask me, that's what I do. I go find that answer later.
Right now, commanders, right?
Right.
I say, hey, with AI, this is what the AI says we need to do. So explainability is a property of AI systems that makes it possible for a human to understand how it got to its decision from the inputs. So that a layperson, and specifically a commander, is in our domain, wants to know why we should take course of action A over course of action B. And you better be able to explain it in a way, because right now they have the decision authority and the responsibility for the effects.
Even if you do have that explainability, right, the amount of information that is being presented to that commander becomes an issue as well. How fast is information going to be there, and options are going to be presented, right? How many, do we have any 17 Echoes, Bravos? Anybody? No, darn it. All right, cool. Well, as enablers, right, we were trained to present options to commanders. Now we have speeds with AI incorporated that cannot be matched by our enablers. Cannot. And they will present those options that will saturate that commander. The question is that commander, is he going or she going to be able to make those decisions, that amount of decisions, to actually keep the speed and the pace of AI? That's another thing. So as we go over these things, I will go over it in my portion as we talk about future of warfare, and we integrate EW and AI. I'm kind of partial being the 170, but yeah, definitely a great point. And I think we're gonna definitely hit on that a little bit later. Pass it back to Lynn.
Thank you.
Question? Yeah.
I want to jump on the point that you made about we have rules, they don't. Yes. And Chief is really alluding to a lot of those rules, and so are you too. I appreciate that. So putting together cyber strike packages, which I was in charge of, and talking about commanders and commanders having responsibilities and whatnot. The key thing is vetting and validating the target. That's one of the stages on that. Can y'all hear me back there? Is that better? Sorry. And then getting buy-in from all the stakeholders, because every one of the stakeholders. So now just think about this. AI is operating at speed. We're operating at what? Policy. And the one other piece in there that always threw me for the loop are the lawyers. And the key thing about the lawyers are bringing that lawyer in that actually understands cyber. And when I say understand cyber, I mean actually has worked in cyber, understands cyber, not just a lawyer. And those were some of the number one challenges I had in getting a strike package approved, or equities that somebody else did not clearly agree to without getting into the classified side of the house. But operating artificial intelligence at the speed of warfare, we are challenged. And I'll leave it at that. So maybe we'll figure it all out this week. Hey, I'll be speaking tomorrow afternoon, by the way.
Make your plug. Go ahead.
I'll be speaking tomorrow afternoon at 2:30. I'll be on an AI panel. We're going to talk about data sources and reliability. It kind of gets into your ethical piece. All right.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That wasn't for the return plug, but I appreciate it. So. Okay, so ultimately you just kind of teed this up, governable, right? That's the most important part. Every AI must remain under meaningful human control. And that's the part that our adversaries will not abide by. That's the biggest piece. That means clear off-ramps, kill switches, or governance protocols to intervene or shut the system down if its behavior strays outside of the approved bounds. And it can and it will continue to do so. So by embedding the DoD principles, the 5 there, into our AI lifecycle, we build systems that not only deliver decisive advantage, but do so fairly and surely, and ultimately under firm human oversight. Policy we'll talk about in a minute. This is where we had a robust conversation, Tom and I and others, but the DoD's AI ethics and principles aren't created in a vacuum. Obviously, they're built directly on the bedrock of our existing legal and moral frameworks that guide everything that we do. So you're going to hear me talk about the U.S. Constitution. The homeschool mom has to come out in me. Our children are not taught the U.S. Constitution in K through 12. We'll have a whole nother talk on that another day. Our AI systems have to operate within the fundamental rights and the liberties enshrined in our Constitution, respecting due process, equal protection, and free speech when they interact with service members or civilians. But as we were talking about last night, you have attorneys who might interpret the U.S. Constitution. And then what does right look like? And you want to elaborate on our conversation? I know you're. I can see you.
And I'll
over
open
here,
up.
like,
Yeah, I'll open up to the room. But this is where things get a little bit cloudy, right? We think the Constitution could be concrete for AI, but no, precedents, right? How is it weighing the Constitution in operational decision making and risk assessment? Is it designed to go get the commander a yes, right? Or is it designed to actually interpret this through precedents, et cetera, so on and so forth? It depends on how we train the model. But how are we going to decide that? And what are we going to step forward with in the future? How are we going to incorporate and integrate this? This was the conversation that we had. I mean, look at the First Amendment, like freedom of speech alone, the separation of church and state, right? You think that's in the First Amendment? It's not clearly stated there, but it's interpreted as. See what I'm saying? It's examples like this where AI has to make those decisions, and we talk about ROE, laws of war, and we're stepping into LISCO, very large scale conflict, right? A very complex, convoluted environment. How does that, how does the Constitution, how does legalities, how does the JAGs not still get involved, and you still have a very bureaucratic process, right, to get around? Because every system's perfect until people get involved, and they're going to want to get involved. Those choices, those decisions, we have to also trust that the AI is making decisions that's going to be ethical and be able to have operational effectiveness, but without precedent. Like, think about the first individuals that trust that and have the risk assessment of, hey, we're stepping forward. And of course, we have commanders that are going to be, assessing that decision. But these are the things that we're going to face, that we are facing already, and it's pretty complicated, even though it's cut and dry.
Thank you. We had a robust conversation about Title X as well, so we'll talk about that. Obviously, Title X is governing the organization, roles, and responsibilities of the armed forces. Nothing new, we all know that. Any autonomous capability we field must remain aligned with the statutory authorities and constraints defined by Congress. Congress or people. We could have a whole another conversation about that, but we talked about that. So now that's in the hands of our congressional authorities. And that too is very challenging. The law of war, also known as the law of armed conflict. These rules obviously ensure we comply with principles of distinction, proportionality, and humanity. AI-enabled effects, whether in sensing, targeting, or decision support, must honor these time-tested safeguards. And then we've got existing international treaties, so we do have some consistencies across the globe, but the Geneva Conventions, arms control agreements, our AI deployments must upload the obligations we've accepted on the world stage, ultimately to preserve them and preserve interoperability and credibility with all of our allies and our partners. And then you've got longstanding norms and values. We've got professional military ethics, the core values of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. They have to remain the ultimate guide point for us. So why do they have to be specific, our principles for AI, our ethical principles? It's really essential. Our existing ethical frameworks, like we just discussed, the US Constitution, international treaties, et cetera, they all provide a solid technology neutral foundation. But however, the advent of AI introduces these new challenges, some of which Tom was just giving an example for, and risks that these frameworks are not equipped to address alone. So the principles we've established are crucial, and they help to navigate these ambiguities and ultimately ensure that AI is used responsibly. More importantly, these principles are applicable across all functions within the military, be it combat or non-combat. So finally, these guidelines are pivotal in helping the US military uphold its legal, ethical, and policy commitments in the field of AI. There's that policy piece. And they ensure that we advance technologically and we remain grounded in our core values. But that's the US, right? That's not our adversaries. So ultimately, for transforming cybersecurity, we'll delve into this because there's a direct application for both cyber and EW, and I would say that's integrated, not a standalone application. So AI allows us to process vast amounts of data efficiently, and we talked about that huge surge in data input. The capability is crucial because it enables us to quickly identify and respond to security threats that could otherwise go unnoticed. We wouldn't have noticed them, a year ago, 2 years ago, what have you. And AI has the power to learn about new and emerging security threats. It's critical for our teams, our cyber teams. It helps us stay ahead of the curve by discovering potential unknown threats. It also provides us with a proactive approach to cybersecurity versus a reactive approach, which is exactly where we want to be, if we're utilizing it properly, of course. AI provides around-the-clock protection. It's 24 hours a day, 365. And the constant vigilance is essential in today's fast-paced digital world. It's significantly reducing the likelihood of errors and ultimately accelerating detection times. So each of these benefits contributes to a more robust cybersecurity framework, and it allows us to protect information much more effectively than we have in the past. With benefits comes challenges, of course, and we've talked about some of them. But the key challenges that I just want to highlight are talent shortages, data access, and compute costs. Those are the big three. Critically, model risk, we've got false positives that burn out analyst time. You've got false negatives that miss stealthy attacks from our adversaries, and susceptibility to poison or synthetic data. And those are all very real challenges today. Adversaries, remember, this can aim at our model, not just our perimeter, right? Now it's a model attack. So first, there's a significant lack of trained personnel, something that ATA is passionately involved in. And although AI offers powerful capabilities, we need skilled professionals. And I think everybody in this room would agree that the DoD needs to advance our skilled workforce as it relates to AI. DoD 8140 is doing some of that. There's defined roles. There's accredited training pathways that are in process right now. We're partnering with a partner, Intelligenesis. Some of you probably know Kraken. We're helping them to accredit their training. Their AI ML specialists is the point they're starting with. They'll have 5 courses. So we're doing that, and it's directly applicable to the DCWF and the JQRs, and we'll make advancements. But do you know that accreditation process can take a year? We don't have a year. That's just accreditation to get through those gates and those wickets. The DoD, I could go off on this for another hour. The DoD CIO alone had to go and hire because their AI model failed them in validating all of the accreditation as a content provider maps all of the elements of training to the DCWF and the JQRs. They have to validate that, right? Because I could go put on paper and say, hey, my course I just developed, here it does all of this. It fits these, 15 MOSs perfectly, what have you, maps to everything. Here's the associated JQRs. Am I factual? Did I make a mistake? They had to validate all that, and the AI failed. Now they're hiring 32 or 34 professionals and SMEs to go through one by one, course by course. So I would suggest that maybe a year might not even be applicable in that process any longer. But still, humans are the key to all of this. Research funding. Research funding is a huge hurdle. Funding in general is a huge hurdle in the DoD. I can tell you as a small defense contractor, and you live that affects you more than it affects me, right? I'm here to serve you. You guys face funding challenges constantly, but specifically research funding. So without adequate financial support, and the innovation stalls, and we can't stall. The U.S. cannot stall, and we cannot fall behind. And ultimately, it limits our ability to advance AI applications in cyber. And then finally, computing resources. They're critical. We've got quantum computing. We're making great gains in compute, but AI requires substantial computational power. And not all organizations have access to the necessary infrastructure. And some of you might be facing that. We could go on a whole nother talk, and it'd be interesting to hear if some of you are involved. We were talking about fractal computing, utilizing fractal computing for AI. Give me your iPhones. We can do that with your iPhones, right? That's a whole nother discussion. I'm fascinated by that. So we're going to make huge advances there, but accessibility to compute power is critical. Not just having compute power. If it's not accessible, it does us no good. And then, of course, access to training data. Whoops, I just slipped my slide there, sorry. Access to training data. Hold on, I went 3 or 4 slides. Is to be effective, AI systems must be trained over vast data sets, but ultimately acquiring those data sets is also a challenge that we face. So how are cyber criminals using AI ML? You've probably seen some of the deep fakes to the right. There's nothing new there. They're crafting targeted phishing and deep fake campaigns, automating reconnaissance. They're generating polymorphic malware that mutates faster than signature-based tools can keep up. And expect more convincing business email compromise. We're seeing it in our small company, right? I have a small team. We're seeing it ourselves at ATA. Voice, video impersonation, and automated social engineering, right? My youngest kid is 19. We've had conversations with the girls that when you get those weird phone calls, right, they're recording your voice. They can use that, and then all of a sudden they're calling grandma. You've heard the horror stories, and we've got your granddaughter, and send money here. My dad got scammed for $40,000, had never wired a dime in his life. I get a phone call, your dad just wired $40,000. To who? Well, he thinks it's Social Security. No, it's not. This was just in the last year. So I'm living proof of all of this right before you. Then you have data gathering. Through social engineering and various techniques, machine learning or ML is utilized to improve victim profiling. There you go. Cyber criminals exploit this information to expedite their attacks. Ransomware, we're seeing a huge resurgence in ransomware, and it's experiencing a troubling revival that numerous examples of successful criminally exploit, and it's happening over and over. What's that?
Amateurs become experts.
Yes, amateurs become experts. That's a perfect example. Spam, phishing, spear phishing. Are you seeing more spam and spear phishing? We're seeing it at ATA again. We're not on the global map that we would be targeted in that sense. But the ML algorithms can generate fake messages that really closely resemble legitimate ones. We're training our team all the time. You're being trained. I know you're having to check that cybersecurity checkbox. But it's important because they're ultimately trying to steal your credentials. Yes. Oh, they also sell gold dust to the precious metals dealers too. My husband's in the precious metals business. I'm sure you've got 2 tons of gold dust, and no, we won't be buying that. Yes, exactly. Yes, that was like a 14-year ago thing, exactly, and now it's back. But ultimately, in the Black Hat presentation we just taught there a couple weeks ago, was that 2 weeks ago? But we were teaching Pen 200 and Web 300. But at Black Hat, John Seymour and Philip Tully showcased how an ML algorithm produced viral tweets containing fake phishing links that were 4 times more effective than those created by humans. 4 times more effective. It's terrifying. Deepfakes, I talked about that already. I keep hitting the wrong button there, forgive me. Okay, so with all that, we've got criminals who are aggressively utilizing AI. How can we use AI in cyber? So pretty straightforward: anomaly detection, risk assessment, vulnerability scanning, incident response, and deception. Anomaly detection for example, anomaly detection on identity and network behavior to flag lateral movement would be a good example. It's the most common way AI tools are coming to the rescue in cybersecurity, certainly the most common. Composite AI fraud detection engines are showing outstanding results. That's a great thing in recognizing complicated scam patterns. The patterns are patterns, and it is identifying those patterns properly. Fraud detection systems' advanced analytics dashboards provide comprehensive details about incidents, and it's an extremely important area within the general field of anomaly detection. That's just one example. Email spam filters. I don't think ours are working as well because I'm getting a ton of it still, but defensive rules filter out messages with suspect words to identify dangerous email. There's improvements that need to be made on our side from a filtering perspective. And spam filters protect email users and reduce the time it takes to go through all that unwanted correspondence. Botnet detection, for example, supervised and unsupervised ML algorithms can facilitate detection, but also prevent sophisticated bot attacks. And they also help identify user behavior patterns to discern undetected attacks with an extremely low false positive rate. Then there's anti-malware, and AI helps antivirus software detect good and bad files, making it possible to identify new forms of malware, even if it's never been seen before. Those are just some good examples. And then we talked about the DoD 8140. I kind of went on that for just a little bit, but technology is not enough. It's ultimately people. And you in this room, as well as defense contractors supporting you, we need people and pathways to use it responsibly. The mission needs a workforce fluent in data, models, and security operations, all 3. That includes analysts who can interpret model outputs, engineers who can evaluate drift and bias, and ultimately leaders who can set policy, sir, and risk appetite, back to that policy. So we have to start with foundations from a learning pathways perspective. That's the part that I can speak very robustly to. And so where do you start? Maybe some of you are trained. Who's formally trained from an AI perspective? Some may not be. I mean, have you taken pathways of training? Yes, sorry, I can imagine you have. But just starting with the foundations, Python. Who's had to sit through a Python class? The warrants just had a Python experience, right? You were just going through Python? Mm-hmm. Yep. WOEC, right? So Python, statistics, data handling, and security analytics. That's that first level, right? Then we're going to add in ML fundamentals, supervised and unsupervised, and then featuring engineering and evaluation. Layer that in that middle tier of training. And then finally, you layer domain specifics, threat intel, detection engineering, SOC workflows, and get into the more specific areas of training. And practice responsibly. Red team your models, test for bias, and ultimately document images.
I will throw it out there that WOAC, in its current approved curriculum, does not include any AI. All right, 2 weeks of Python, PowerShell,
You're here now. so-
right? And so, yeah, we're having to go outside and use our own personal resources, use our access, our credentialing online, or whatever it is we can get a hold of. So yeah, we need more.
Thank you for stealing my thunder.
So your credentialing
Appreciate
funds
it.
went from 4,000 to 2,000, sir. So,
I'm ready.
okay.
All right.
Would you like a hand?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do this.
All right.
Okay. All right. Hello again, guys. So the future of warfare and AI. What a broad subject. What a broad subject to cover. But this is the intro. And of course, I'm going to have an EW multi-domain innovations approach to this because of my bias. But I'm going to cover some topics that range from acquisitions in AI to economic trends to what we're seeing from a tactical and operational level. And that's what I'm going to focus on. Those are some of the things, but they're not all the things. And as it was stated earlier in this brief, we definitely are going to be outpaced by the end of this brief. AI is just taking off. It has already left us by the time we get to this room right here.
I will do 10 minutes, Tom.
Okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hey, speed. We got this.
Speed.
Yeah. We have the that last bullet right there. Speed determines victory. So I've got this. As we look at this, artificial intelligence is fundamentally reshaping how we see warfare, how we see operations, how we see planning, how we see logistics, how we see all functions and enablers. It will reshape how we actually look at every problem set. Because of the speed, because of the ability to work through these problems, work through those enabler problems, present information. You talked about the JAGs earlier, right? That process entirely, how do we get to a place where we feel comfortable enough to have information that is presented, but then also validated and presented by the JAGs to the commander that is going to reduce risk and make him feel comfortable and establish trust. So those sort of things, as we said those things, like I'm just sitting here going, yeah, it's on every one of our minds. Every green shooter that's in here right now is thinking, hey, how is AI going to affect my operation? How are we going to adapt and evolve? You're talking about training, those are the things. Thank you so much for clicking. Okay.
Yeah, no.
So, oh God, thank you. All right. So one of my favorite slides here, great graphic. This is just a few of the basic defense budgets around the world from a 2024 census, okay? With that, China, Russia, and then NATO without the U.S., and then the U.S. So, and then to the left of it, and I am absolutely dyslexic, so this is great. But to the left of it, we actually see the AI, how much they're spending on AI in individual categories, AI in comms, AI in ISR, et cetera, so on and so forth. And the thing that I really want to bring to your attention as I have these last few minutes here is if we look at the U.S. Expenses on DoD expenditures, right, our defense budget, we actually see $900 trillion, right? And so, but we match China in how much we're spending on AI. comparatively to, and we know that China never skews its budgets ever. So this is accurate numbers here. I'm just kidding. You guys can laugh. It's fine. It's fine. I'm telling you. So we look at China, 314 billion, right? But they're matching us in how much they're spending on AI, if not exceeding, right next to us. So the portion and percentage is bigger. And when you think about China and how they actually conduct business, they are thinking generationally. So when they make a move like this in 2024, that should be a shockwave. That should be a wake-up call on how they're emphasizing basically their budget, right? In the same sense, we look at Russia. Russia has a GDP of $1.8 trillion. And out of that, their defense budget, we look at it right there, $109 billion, roughly. And that number, don't set me to that number. There's like 3, 4, 5 different variants of their defense budget and what it presents, but that was the best median I could get. But look at them. They're spending a large portion of that $108 billion on AI. All of our adversaries, they know that this is going to be the next thing. And China itself, this is how they play catch up. Not only that, this is how, on the other side of them spending, they also are prone to acquiring things very, very rapidly, aka stealing them, right? So if they're also spending and doing the things that they usually do, this is definitely an indicator of where AI is going. Next slide. Okay, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Okay, cool. Title 10 and Title 50. All right, who here, I don't have enough time to cover this, but Title 10, Title 50. Who's had this argument, this debate? Vampires and werewolves, SIGINT versus EW, cyber versus EW, right? This is huge. But the way I see it is AI can be extremely beneficial in the dissemination of information as well as the ability to basically cover policy. When policy changes, when a DoD directive comes out, when a DoD comes out, when CJCS, these policies can be blanket applied, and thanks guys. These policies can be applied and actually and massively basically shared throughout the community rapidly. I know in my community, when these things come out, when policy comes out, when doctrine comes out, we have a very small window where, hey, there's a release message, we get it, and then half our community doesn't get that DoD. Half of that community doesn't get that policy. Half of that community doesn't hear about the rules of engagement or the FDO process. These processes can be streamlined with AI, but that comes with trusting the data and trusting where it comes from, and then establishing communications. Thank you again. All right, so AIEW. Yeah, at this point, these are some of the things that are going on, and I will go back to my notes here. So as we embrace the AI-driven tactical electronic warfare, we must fully expect adversaries to do the same, right? As we covered throughout this entire brief. And expect adversaries to rapidly adjust just in the same fashion that we are expected to rapidly adjust, and not only our expenditures, but our tactics, our operations, et cetera, so on and so forth. AI will be in everything that we do. Adversaries will employ AI-controlled drone swarms capable of overwhelming, and this is not will, they already are. In addition to that, we have autonomous drones that are self-driving, and they also identify biometrics and rapidly get to their target, right? Doesn't matter. They whitelist the biometrics on the enemy or on their side, and then they identify that enemy. I'm going so fast, I'm trying real hard. All right, cool. EW soldiers for AI on the battlefield. This is just my recommendations for education. I'm just gonna wrap it up real quick. So education, we need to make sure we're educating. We have warrants here that are talking about it right now. Hey, where is AI? How are we going to start understanding this and educating? And we also need to talk about how we interface with AI. Those that aren't going to be using this are going to be the ones that are left behind. And I've heard it in many different classrooms. In fact, I just attended Swoley, and someone was like, I don't want to use AI because, I want to still be able to think. It still requires creativity. It still requires an art and a science of planning and operationally executing, right? So just keep that in mind. Those are my recommendations, and that's going to sum it up. I'm going to give this back to you. Very good.
Thank you. So I won't, we want to wrap up and be conscientious of your time. So sorry to run late, but our key takeaways, they're pretty straightforward. The use, the ethics, the people, pairing with skilled cyber and EW professionals. We hope to move that forward collectively within both those communities, conjoined and not separate between cyber and EW. That is our goal. Of course, we have training pathways. I won't belabor you with that. We have 2 booths. We'd love to sit and visit with you, both down on the main floor and here up next to SANS Institute, one of our very strong long-term partners. So come by and talk with us at any point in time. Most exciting is our ML AI specialist that I just talked to you about. So we don't have a ton of time. Q&A, I would love to give some books away. I've got a couple people who've already participated. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the talk. Can you create an ethical AI agent in the sense that shoot, no shoot decisions can be broader and then we don't have to go through the lawyers, right? They just have to meet what a human shoot, no shoot is and embed the Constitution, Title 10, or just law of warfare into the trained AI?
My question with that is, if you're talking about operations, why wouldn't it still go to the JAG? I mean, yes, ethically, but that's subjective. Once again, your shoot, no shoot criteria.
Right, but you can trust this AI to do more of the ethical decisions by training it. Can you train it to be ethical so you don't have to have the governance principles you've talked about?
Is there a precedent?
What's the line? Because
That's correct.
What's the line between maintaining the ethical framework and operational effectiveness in the battlefield? Because to your point, you're talking about autonomously controlled drone swarms or just purpose-built drones. Is when you go into a highly active EW environment,
Yes.
is like purpose-built, narrow-focused AI models are probably going to be the only thing that's going to keep that drone up. So really, what is the compromise? What's the gray area? I don't have the answer to that, because that's
Yes, and I wanted to cover that more. Trust me, I can talk about this for days. And literally, this is my passion. This is what I love. Denied and degraded environments. How do we survive that? AI is the answer, right? They can adapt on the fly, be able to adjust and go. But the shoot, no shoot criteria, if we get to that line, it will be the commander that assumes risk when that information is presented. But why not incorporate your staff? I guess at a certain point, your AI is your JAG, but do we get there? I can't answer that now, but and I couldn't even say, hey, in 5 years, AI is going to look like this. I wish I had that much confidence, but that's a great question. Maybe it does change, but there is that line.
Good
and
question
we'll walk
for
up to it.
your panel to discuss. Yes, ma'am.
So I find the discussion a little depressing, because knowing that our enemies
Skynet.
are not adhering to ethics, right? And we are. So we're infusing Western values into our AI. One of Western values is the value of life, right? Which our enemies do not have. So I could see every single battle scenario being defeated by the ethics we're infusing. Not that I'm advocating for non-ethical AI. So an example is the drone swarm, for example, right? What if you hide your enemy in the midst of a bunch of civilians? Is your AI going to take action?
That may already be happening.
Yes, agreed. So it's a little bit depressing, and I don't know if you guys have answers to how do you get around the enemy.
But we're discussing it. We're opening the forum. It is going to be sad. It is going to be scary. It is going to be those things. But at the same time, this is where we come up with our solutions. And I don't have them all, but I definitely want to field those questions.
So not really, I guess, kind of rhetorical question, but if there's anyone here from TRADOC.
I was for a little while.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talked about the 17 series schoolhouse. We talked a little bit about the lawyers, but it also gets to
Every other
battalion, pre-command, brigade pre-command, Sergeant Major Academy, War College, CGSC, and how do you integrate AI into responsible decision making?
You're nailing it. That it needs to be in every schoolhouse. It's literally like counter UAS.
And it's going to change, like you said, it's going to change weekly, that curriculum.
Absolutely.
So, but if we're not teaching that and how to,
Oh boy.
we have contractors for that. Yeah, but then also, you get to the question of actual just raw power and how far can you push AI towards the FLOT And, as the Army over the past decade has whined and moaned, I shouldn't say it that way, but we've
okay.
wrung our hands about, batteries and things like that and power to do these things. How far can we push AI towards the FLOT without stressing other systems?
So some of the things that I was going to cover, and I'll cover them very briefly, is exactly that. The tactical, operational, and strategic level of AI. How do you get those soldiers fitted? How do you get them to understand their operational environment now that AI is entered? And what does the art and the science look like for them surviving in those environments? And I hate to say the art science thing, but really, we have a science of coin that we've been doing for the last 20 years. But, okay. But now we have LISCO. And now we have to understand the tech, et cetera, so on and so forth. So I don't want to sit here and beat a dead horse, but yeah, AI, it's a big deal. I'm saying, guys. But thank you for that.
Thank you. Sorry
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much. You touched a couple of my favorite topics. One is ethics and AI. I actually teach a class annually to professional licensed engineers in the area, and AI has become one of those topics for sure. And what bottom line is, because we can do something doesn't mean we should be doing it. And that's the human reasoning part needs to be actually part of those decisions that we make. And so that's a very difficult topic. I had started my own engineering company 25 years ago, and until today, one of the very first things we got into was I'll call it forensic analysis. Engineers designing things that will work perfectly, but you can't build it. Can't get there from here. And so that results in failures, things falling down during construction. And my son was just here with a family business. We just had one of those up in Greenville, that experience. We weren't involved in the details of the design. 1 million square foot new warehouse, and there were some flaws in the sequencing of putting it together. And so, anyway, it fell down. My son is down here during construction and say, wait, you guys didn't follow the instructions how to put this together. So it's a real issue. And the real issue, I can give lots of examples. And I won't do, time is up. Thank you to our presenters, for sure. And enjoy the rest of the conference.